The rain fell in sheets across the muddy road, turning the world into a gray blur of cold water and darker despair. And Yosef Hartford stood at his kitchen window, watching a figure approach his farmhouse with two smaller shapes trailing behind. He knew before they reached his fence what they were. The way they moved, hunched against the downpour but still maintaining that distinctive orc bearing, shoulders squared despite obvious exhaustion. He set down the cup of tea he had been holding, its warmth suddenly inadequate against the chill that crept through him. The old orc woman stopped at his gate, her green skin darkened by the rain, her graying hair plastered to her skull. Behind her huddled two young girls, perhaps 8 and 11, their small tusks barely visible as they pressed against their mother's sides. The woman looked up at his house, and even from this distance, Yosef could see the defeat in her eyes warring with desperate hope. He should send them away. Everyone in the valley would tell him to bar his door, to pretend he had not seen them. Orcs meant trouble. They always had, especially now with the border raids increasing and old hatreds flaring like dry kindling. He had fought in the war 12 years ago. He knew what orcs could do, but he also knew what hunger looked like. Yosef pulled on his coat and stepped out onto the porch, the rain immediately soaking through to his shoulders. He walked down the path to his gate, each step deliberate, giving himself time to change his mind. The old orc woman straightened as he approached, trying to summon some dignity despite her obvious destitution. Her daughters clung to her torn skirts, shivering. "One meal," she said, her voice rough with exhaustion and pride barely held intact. "I beg you, sir, just one meal for my daughters. They have not eaten in 3 days." Up close, Yosef could see the hollow cheeks, the way the girls' clothes hung on frames too thin for growing children. The older girl had a bruise yellowing on her jaw. The younger one's lips were blue with cold. "Where is your clan?" Yosef asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Gone." The word came out flat, final. "We were cast out." "Why?" The orc woman's jaw tightened. "I helped a human child who had fallen in the river, pulled her from the water and returned her to her family. My chief said I had dishonored our people by showing weakness to our enemies." She lifted her chin slightly. "I would do it again, but my daughters should not have to starve for my choice." Yosef stood in the rain, water running down his face, and thought of his own daughter. She had been 7 when the fever took her, 3 years ago now. His wife had followed her into the ground just 6 months later, her heart simply giving up its fight. He had been alone on this farm ever since, working the fields and tending the animals, existing rather than living. "Come inside," he said, and opened the gate. The orc woman's eyes widened. "You would let us in, into your home. I would let you dry off and feed your children, yes." Yosef turned toward the house. "You can decide whether that is foolish or kind." He heard their uncertain footsteps behind him on the path, the wet squelch of bare feet in mud. None of them had shoes. He pushed open his door and gestured them inside, watching as they hesitated at the threshold. "I have no weapons," the woman said quietly. "I cannot hurt you even if I wished to. I did not ask." Yosef stepped aside. "Please, you are letting the heat out." They entered like frightened animals, ready to bolt at the first sign of threat. The girls pressed against their mother, their wide eyes taking in the simple farmhouse. It was not much. A main room with a kitchen area, a fireplace, a table and chairs, a few shelves. 2 doors led to the bedrooms beyond. But it was warm and dry, and that alone made it seem like a palace compared to wherever they had been sleeping. "Sit by the fire," Yosef said, moving to stoke the flames higher. "I will get blankets." He returned with his wife's old quilts, the ones he had not been able to give away even though they pained him to see. The orc woman wrapped them around her daughters first, rubbing their arms to warm them. Only when the girls were settled did she accept a blanket for herself. Yosef put on a pot of stew, grateful he had made extra the night before. As it heated, he pulled out bread and cheese, setting it on the table. "Eat this while you wait for the stew to warm." The girls looked to their mother, who nodded permission. They fell on the food with the desperate efficiency of the truly starving, trying to maintain some semblance of manners, but unable to hide their desperation. The orc woman ate more slowly, but Yosef noticed her hands shaking as she brought the bread to her mouth. "What are your names?" he asked, settling into a chair. The woman swallowed. "I am Grusha. This is Neela, my eldest, and Mika, my youngest. I am Yosef Hartford. This farm has been in my family for 3 generations. You are alone here." Grusha's eyes tracked to the doors, to the evidence of a home built for more than one person. "Yes, my wife and daughter passed some years ago. I am sorry for your loss." The words were formal but sincere. "And I am sorry yours has been so recent." Yosef ladled stew into bowls. "Where were you headed when you came here?" Grusha was quiet for a long moment. "Nowhere. Anywhere. I thought perhaps across the mountains to the coastal regions where they say orcs and humans sometimes trade peacefully. But that is many weeks of travel, and winter is coming." She looked down at her bowl. "I was beginning to think we would not survive to see those lands." "You might have," Yosef said, "but your daughters likely would not have." The truth of it hung in the air between them. Grusha's hands tightened on her bowl, her knuckles going pale green. "I know." They ate in silence after that, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the steady drum of rain on the roof. Yosef watched the girls slowly revive as warmth and food worked their magic. Color returned to their cheeks. Mika's shivers gradually subsided. Neela's eyes grew heavy, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "They can sleep in my daughter's room," Yosef found himself saying. "Just for tonight. The bed is empty." Grusha stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because they are children and they were cold and hungry." Yosef stood and began clearing the bowls. "Do you need more reason than that? Most humans would." "I am not most humans. I can see that." Grusha helped her daughters to their feet. "We will leave in the morning." "I thank you for this kindness. It has been a long time since anyone showed us mercy." Yosef showed them to the small bedroom, trying not to look at the dust covers he had placed over everything after his daughter died. Grusha settled her girls into the bed, tucking them in with a tenderness that made something in his chest ache. He left them there and returned to the main room, stoking the fire and settling into his chair. He must have dozed because he woke to find Grusha sitting at his table, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring into the dying embers of the fire. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. She startled slightly. "I did not mean to wake you." "You did not. I am a light sleeper." Yosef added another log to the fire. "Would you like tea?" I would not want to impose further. If it were an imposition, I would not have offered. A ghost of a smile touched her weathered face. "Then yes, thank you." He made the tea in silence, setting a cup before her and taking the seat across the table. The rain had lessened to a steady patter. Beyond the windows, the world was dark and formless. "How old are your daughters?" Yosef asked. "Neela is 11. Mika is 8. Grusha wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "Their father died in a hunting accident 2 years ago. He was a good male, strong and kind. I am sorry. Life takes what it will, we have no choice but to endure." She sipped her tea. "Your wife, how long were you married?" 10 years. "We had one child, the daughter I mentioned. She was everything good in my life." Yosef looked into his own cup. "When she died, my wife simply faded. The healers said her heart was sound, but I knew better. It was broken, and broken hearts do not mend." "And yours?" "Still beating, for what it is worth." They sat in companionable silence, two people who had lost too much finding strange comfort in shared grief. When Grusha finally rose to return to her daughters, Yosef found himself speaking without planning to. The storm is supposed to last 3 more days. The roads will be impassable, turn to rivers of mud. Stay until it passes. Let your daughters rest properly. Grusha turned, studying him with eyes that had seen too much suffering to easily trust kindness. Why would you risk harboring orcs? If your neighbors discovered us here, they would turn on you. My nearest neighbor is 5 miles away, and he minds his own business. As for risk, Yosef shrugged. I have been alone in this house for 3 years, going through the motions of living without remembering why. If I cannot show mercy to a mother trying to save her children, then what is the point of any of it? You are a strange human, Yosef Hartford. So I have been told. In the morning, the rain continued its relentless assault. Yosef woke to find Grusha already up, the fire stoked and fresh tea brewing. He raised an eyebrow. Old habits, she said. I am not comfortable accepting charity without offering something in return. It is not charity, it is basic decency. Then allow me to maintain my dignity by contributing to the household while we remain. Yosef considered arguing but recognized the steel in her tone. As you wish. The day passed quietly. The girls emerged from their room looking far better than they had the night before, though still painfully thin. Yosef set out breakfast, bread and eggs and the last of the bacon from his smokehouse, and watched them eat with an appetite that spoke of growing health. Would you like to see the animals? He asked Mika, who had been casting curious glances out the window toward the barn. Her eyes lit up, but she looked to her mother first. Grusha nodded permission. I would like that very much, sir, Mika said softly. Just Yosef is fine. He bundled them in old coats that had belonged to his wife and daughter, too large for the orc girls but serviceable enough. They dashed through the rain to the barn, where Yosef's small herd of dairy cows, 2 pigs, and a collection of chickens greeted them with various sounds of complaint about the weather. They are beautiful, Neela breathed, approaching one of the cows with careful reverence. You can pet her. Her name is Bess. She has a gentle temperament. Yosef showed them how to properly approach the animals, how to read their moods, how to move around them safely. The girls were quick learners and utterly fearless, even when one of the pigs decided to investigate them with enthusiastic snuffling. Their laughter, rare and precious, filled the barn with warmth no fire could provide. When they returned to the house, soaked but happy, Grusha had prepared a midday meal from the vegetables in his cellar. She had also cleaned the kitchen with military efficiency. You did not need to do that, Yosef said. I told you I will contribute. She ladled out soup. Your cellar is well stocked, but your shelves are in disorder. Tomorrow, if the rain continues, I will organize them properly. You are a guest, not a servant. I am a mother with 2 mouths to feed and nothing to offer but labor. Let me do this. Yosef wanted to argue but saw in her eyes the same thing he had felt after his wife died, the desperate need to be useful, to have purpose, to matter. So he nodded and said nothing more about it. The pattern continued for 3 days. The storm raged outside while inside, a strange household formed. Grusha organized his storage, mended his clothes, cooked meals that made his house smell like a home again. The girls helped with chores, their natural cheerfulness slowly re-emerging from beneath layers of fear and privation. Yosef taught them about the farm, found himself telling stories about his childhood, laughed at Mika's terrible jokes. On the 4th morning, he woke to silence. The rain had stopped. He found Grusha already packing their few belongings, the girls subdued and sad. His chest tightened at the sight. The roads will still be poor for travel, he said. You should wait another day or two. We have imposed long enough. Grusha would not meet his eyes. You have been more than generous. We will not abuse your hospitality further. It is not abuse if I am offering. Yosef. She finally looked at him, and he saw genuine anguish in her weathered face. I cannot allow myself to become comfortable here. The longer we stay, the harder it will be to leave. And we must leave. You know this. He did know it. He knew it in the rational part of his mind that understood how the world worked, that recognized the danger of harboring orcs, that knew this could only ever be temporary. But there was another part of him, one that had woken up for the first time in 3 years, that could not bear the thought of this house falling silent again. Where will you go? He asked. South, I think. The coastal road will be easier than the mountain passes with winter approaching. That is 100 miles, maybe more. We will manage. Grusha. Yosef moved to the table, leaned against it. Your daughters are still recovering. They need proper food, rest, time to rebuild their strength. Another week. Give them another week. Why? Her voice cracked on the word. Why do you care what happens to us? We are orcs. We are supposed to be your enemies. You are not my enemies. You are a mother and her children who needed help. Yosef met her gaze steadily. And if I am being honest, having you here has reminded me what it feels like to be alive instead of merely existing. I had forgotten. I did not realize how much I had forgotten. Grusha's hands trembled. This cannot last. You know it cannot. I know. But does that mean we should throw away what we have now? Another week. Then, if you must go, I will give you provisions and coin enough to reach the coast safely. I cannot accept your money. You can and you will, because I will not send children out into the world with nothing. They stood in tense silence, wills locked. Finally, Grusha closed her eyes and nodded. 1 week. That week turned into 2, then 3. The excuse was always reasonable. Mika developed a cough that needed to clear. The roads were still treacherous from the rains. The first frost came early, and travel would be difficult. Yosef made each argument, and Grusha accepted each one, and neither of them acknowledged what was actually happening. They were becoming a family. It crept up on them in small moments. Grusha humming while she cooked, the same tune his wife used to sing. Neela helping Yosef mend the fence, her young strength surprising him. Mika falling asleep against his side during evening stories, her small tusks pressing into his ribs. The 4 of them eating dinner together, passing dishes, sharing their days, existing in a bubble of domestic peace. Yosef had not been happy in so long he almost did not recognize the feeling when it returned. But the world beyond his farm had not forgotten what they were. He was reminded of this when Marcus Reynolds, his nearest neighbor, appeared one morning with news from town. There is talk of increased patrols, Marcus said, accepting a cup of tea. Some orcs raided the Thornton place 2 valleys over, killed their son, took their livestock. People are afraid. Yosef's blood ran cold. When did this happen? 3 nights ago. The militia is organizing search parties. Marcus paused. You have not seen anything unusual, have you? Any sign of orcs in the area? Yosef thought of Grusha, who at that moment was in the barn with the girls, teaching them to properly clean the stalls. He thought of Neela's gentle hands on the cows, of Mika's delighted laughter when the chickens swarmed her feet. He thought of Grusha's worn face softening when she watched her daughters play. No, he lied. Nothing unusual. Marcus nodded, seeming satisfied. Good, keep your doors locked anyway. These are dangerous times. He left soon after, and Yosef stood on his porch, watching his neighbor ride away, his stomach churning. When Grusha came in from the barn, she took one look at his face and went still. What happened? He told her. Watched the color drain from her green skin, saw her hands clench into fists. We will leave tonight, she said flatly. "I will not put you in danger. You are not the ones who attacked that farm. It does not matter. We are orcs. That is all they will see." Grusha moved toward the bedroom. "I will gather our things." Yosef caught her arm. "Wait. For what?" "For them to find us here and hang you for harboring the enemy." Her voice was fierce, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I will not let that happen." "Where will you go?" "If there are patrols searching for orcs, the roads will be watched. You will be caught." "Then we will go into the forest. We will hide until it is safe. With winter coming, you will freeze." "Better that than bringing death to your door." She pulled away from him. "You have been kind, Yosef, kinder than I had any right to expect, but this must end before someone gets hurt." "What if I do not want it to end?" The words hung between them, too honest, too raw. Grusha stared at him, her breath coming quick. "You do not know what you are saying." "I know exactly what I am saying." Yosef took a step toward her. "I know that for the first time in 3 years. I wake up with a reason to get out of bed. I know that your daughters have brought laughter back to this house. I know that when I look at you, I see strength and kindness and a fierce love that I thought I would never witness again. And I know that the thought of you leaving tears me apart inside." "Yosef," her voice was a whisper, "I am an orc. And I am a human who has been half dead for too long. Does the rest matter? To the world, yes. To everyone who would see us together and call it abomination. To those who would hurt you for this. Let them talk. Let them rage. I am tired of living by other people's fears." Grusha closed her eyes. "You say this now, but when the reality sets in, when you face real consequences, you will regret it. I regret many things in my life. Asking you to stay will not be one of them." She opened her eyes, and he saw in them a war between hope and despair. "If we stay, we do so in secret. The girls cannot go to town. We must be careful. One mistake and it all falls apart. Then we will be careful. And when spring comes, what then?" Yosef reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her skin was warm and rough with calluses, the hand of someone who had worked hard her whole life. "When spring comes, we will decide together what comes next, but for now just stay, please." Grusha looked down at their joined hands, and a single tear traced down her weathered cheek. "You are going to break my heart, Yosef Hartford. Not if I can help it." They stood like that for a long moment before Neela's voice called from outside, asking if it was time for lunch. Grusha pulled her hand away gently and wiped her eyes. "I will make something," she said, her voice almost steady. The days shortened as autumn deepened. Yosef showed the girls how to harvest the last of the garden, how to preserve food for winter, how to recognize which plants were useful and which were poison. They were quick learners, soaking up knowledge with the intensity of children who understood that skills meant survival. Grusha proved to have a talent for animal husbandry. Under her care, the cows' milk production increased, the chickens laid more regularly, even the cantankerous pigs seemed calmer. She moved through the farm work with efficient grace, and Yosef found himself watching her more often than was probably proper. She was not beautiful in the conventional sense. Her face was too weathered, her tusks too prominent, her build too muscular. But there was something compelling about her, a fierce vitality that drew him like a flame. He noticed the way she moved, economical and purposeful. He noticed how her rare smiles transformed her entire face. He noticed the gray in her hair and wanted to know the story of each strand. He was falling in love with her, and the realization terrified him. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, he and Grusha sat by the fire as had become their habit. She was mending one of his shirts, her thick fingers surprisingly nimble with the needle. "You never talk about your clan," Yosef said. "What were they like?" Grusha was quiet for several stitches. "Traditional, proud. We lived in the mountains, followed the old ways. Strength was valued above all else, and weakness was not tolerated. Saving a child was considered weakness. Saving a human child was considered betrayal. Her hands stilled. They said I had dishonored my mate's memory by showing mercy to the enemy, that I was teaching my daughters to be soft. What did your mate think of humans, Jorgen? He was complicated. He believed what he was taught, that humans were dangerous and untrustworthy. But he also believed in protecting the helpless. He would have disapproved of my choice, but he would have understood it. She resumed sewing. He was a good father. The girls still miss him. And you? I miss having a partner, someone to share the burden of decisions, to help carry the weight of raising children. She tied off the thread and bit it clean. I miss not being alone. You are not alone now. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the same longing he felt reflected in her eyes. No, I am not. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Yosef wanted to close the distance, to take her hand again, to pull her close and bury his face in her hair. But something held him back. Fear, maybe, or the lingering ghost of his wife's memory. Grusha looked away first. It is late. I should sleep. Grusha, good night, Yosef. She fled to her room, and Yosef sat alone by the dying fire, calling himself a coward. Winter came early that year, sweeping down from the mountains with bitter winds and heavy snow. The farm was isolated, cut off from town by drifts that reached above the windows. It should have been frightening, but instead, Yosef felt safer than he had in months. No one could reach them here. For a while, they could pretend the rest of the world did not exist. The girls delighted in the snow, having never seen it in such quantities. Yosef showed them how to build snow fortifications, and the ensuing snowball war left all four of them soaked and laughing. Grusha's aim was devastating, her throws precise enough to knock his hat clean off his head from 30 paces. You have a good arm, he said, recovering his hat from a snowbank. I was the best hunter in my clan, she said with quiet pride. Before everything, you must miss it. The hunting, I mean, sometimes, but I do not miss the constant proving of myself, the endless tests of strength and skill. It was exhausting. She packed another snowball absently. Here I can just be. It is a strange feeling. A good one, I hope. Yes. She looked at him, snowflakes catching in her graying hair. Very good. That night, a blizzard hit with howling fury. The wind screamed around the farmhouse, rattling the shutters and finding every crack in the walls. Yosef woke to Mika's frightened cry and found both girls huddled with their mother in the main room, the fire burning high. The wind scared them, Grusha explained. It sounds like the ice demons from our old stories. There are no demons, Yosef said firmly, settling into his chair. Just weather. It will pass. But the storm raged for 3 days, and by the second night, even the adults were on edge. The walls creaked ominously. The temperature dropped despite the roaring fire. They huddled together for warmth, Yosef telling every story he could remember to distract the girls from their fear. On the third night, a tremendous crack sounded from above. Yosef barely had time to shout a warning before part of the roof gave way, snow and debris cascading down into the far corner of the room. Freezing wind poured through the gap. Everyone into my bedroom, Yosef shouted over the howling storm. Quickly. They scrambled into the larger bedroom, dragging blankets and supplies. Yosef stuffed cloth into the gap beneath the door while Grusha built up the small fireplace in the corner. The room was cramped with all four of them, but it was warmer than the main room with its gaping hole. Will the rest of the roof hold? Neela asked, her eyes wide with fear. Yes, Yosef said with more confidence than he felt. The damage is isolated. We just need to wait out the storm. They spent that night pressed together on and around the bed, sharing warmth. Yosef found himself with Grusha beside him, her solid presence oddly comforting. The girls slept fitfully between them, and sometime in the deep night, he felt Grusha's hand find his beneath the blankets. He squeezed it gently, and she squeezed back, and neither of them let go until morning. The storm finally broke at dawn, leaving the world buried in white silence. Yosef climbed carefully onto what remained of his roof and assessed the damage. A tree limb, laden with ice and snow, had crashed through the old shingles. It would need significant repair, work that would take weeks. "How bad is it?" Grusha called up to him. "Bad enough. I can patch it temporarily, but proper repair will have to wait until spring." "I can help." He looked down at her, standing in the snow in his dead wife's boots, her breath misting in the cold air. "You do not need to. I was not asking permission." They worked together for the next week, clearing debris, constructing a temporary barrier against the elements, reinforcing what they could. Grusha proved to be incredibly strong, lifting beams Yosef would have struggled with, working tirelessly through the short winter days. Side by side they labored, and in that shared purpose, something shifted between them. One afternoon, as they were securing the last of the temporary patches, Grusha slipped on the ice-slicked roof. Yosef lunged, catching her around the waist, and they both went down hard on the wooden shingles. For a moment they lay tangled together, hearts racing, breath coming fast. "Are you hurt?" Yosef asked. No, they should have gotten up. Instead, Yosef found himself staring into Grusha's eyes, seeing his own desire reflected there. Her lips were close, her body warm against his despite the cold. Time seemed to slow. "Yosef," she whispered. "I know this is complicated," he said. "I know there are 1,000 reasons this is impossible, but I cannot stop thinking about you. I cannot stop wanting." She kissed him. It was fierce and desperate and perfect, her tusks pressing against his cheeks, her calloused hands framing his face. Yosef kissed her back with all the longing he had been suppressing, pulling her closer, not caring that they were on a roof in the middle of winter, that this was probably insane, that the world would call them abomination. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grusha pressed her forehead to his. "This is madness. Yes, we cannot take it back. I do not want to. The girls will adjust. They already love you, and I—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "And you." Her voice was barely audible. "I love you, Grusha. I did not mean to, I did not plan for it, but I do." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "I am afraid. I have not felt this way since Jorgen, and losing him nearly destroyed me. If I let myself love you and then lose you too, you will not lose me. I am not going anywhere. You cannot promise that. The world is cruel to people like us. Then we will face that cruelty together." Grusha closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were bright with tears. "You stubborn, foolish human, I love you too. Against all wisdom and sense, I love you." They kissed again, softer this time, sealing the admission. When they finally climbed down from the roof, Neela and Mika were watching from the window, identical grins on their young faces. "I think they know," Grusha said dryly. "I think they have known for a while." That night, after the girls were asleep, Yosef and Grusha sat together on his bed, hands entwined, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood in the mountains, about learning to hunt from her father, about the first time she held Neela as a newborn and felt her entire world shift. He told her about meeting his wife at a harvest festival, about his daughter's first steps, about the crushing weight of grief that had nearly buried him. "You feel guilty?" Grusha asked. "For loving again?" "Sometimes. But I think Sarah would want me to be happy. She had the biggest heart of anyone I knew. She would have liked you. I wish I could have met her. I wish you could have too. They slept that night in each other's arms, chaste and comforting, and Yosef woke feeling more at peace than he had in years. The winter deepened, and with it, their relationship. They stole kisses in the barn, held hands beneath the dinner table, shared quiet moments of intimacy that felt precious and fragile. The girls adjusted with the easy acceptance of children, calling Yosef by his name but treating him with the trust they might show a father. But the world beyond the farm had not forgotten them. In late winter, when the snow had begun to melt, Marcus Reynolds appeared again with troubling news. The militia had tracked the raiding orcs to a cave system in the mountains. There had been a battle. Most of the orcs were dead, but a few had escaped. They are saying any orc found in the valley should be killed on sight, Marcus said grimly. Dangerous times, Yosef. Keep yourself armed. After Marcus left, Yosef found Grusha in the barn, her hands shaking as she tried to milk the cows. They will kill us, she said flatly. If they find us, they will not ask questions. They will just kill us. They will not find you. We have been careful. Careful is not enough. She stood abruptly, the milk pail sloshing. Winter is ending. Soon the roads will be passable. People will travel again. Someone will see us. Someone will talk, and then we will deal with it. How? You cannot fight the entire valley. If I must, I will. Grusha laughed, a bitter sound. You would die for us, for an orc and her half-blood children, in a heartbeat. The certainty in his voice seemed to break something in her. She sagged against the cow, her face crumpling. I cannot ask that of you. I will not. Yosef crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. You are not asking. I am choosing. Do you understand? I am choosing you, choosing this, choosing us. Whatever comes, we face it together. You are an idiot, she said into his chest, probably, but I am your idiot. Despite the danger, or perhaps because of it, Yosef made a decision. One evening in early spring, with the first flowers beginning to push through the melting snow, he asked Grusha to walk with him. They strolled through the muddy fields, hands entwined, watching the sun set in shades of gold and pink. When they reached the old oak tree at the property's edge, the one his grandfather had planted when he first claimed this land, Yosef stopped. I have been thinking, he said carefully, about the future, about what happens when spring fully arrives and the world intrudes again. Grusha tensed. Yosef, let me finish, please. He took both her hands in his. I know this is unconventional. I know society would condemn us, but I do not care about society's opinion. I care about you, about Neela and Mika, about the family we have built here. What are you saying? I am saying I want to make it official. In the eyes of whatever gods might be listening, I want to pledge myself to you, to forsake all others and build a life together for whatever time we are given. Grusha's eyes went wide. You are talking about marriage. Yes. That is illegal. No priest would perform such a ceremony. No town would recognize it. I do not need a priest or a town. I just need you. Will you marry me, Grusha? Will you be my wife in truth, even if we can never speak it aloud beyond these walls? She was crying now, tears streaming down her weathered green cheeks. You are absolutely insane. That is not an answer. Yes, the word came out choked. Yes, you ridiculous man, I will marry you. He kissed her there beneath the oak tree, with the spring sunset painting the sky and the sound of the girls laughing in the distance. They had no rings, no witnesses except the awakening earth, no blessing except their own conviction. But when they spoke their vows to each other, simple words of love and commitment and fierce determination to face whatever came, it felt more real than any ceremony could have made it. That night they made love for the first time, gentle and awkward and perfect, learning the landscape of each other's bodies. Grusha's skin was softer than he expected, her strength tempered with surprising vulnerability. She traced his scars, the marks of his own battles and losses, with tender reverence. They moved together slowly, savoring every touch, every whispered endearment, every moment of connection. Afterward, lying tangled in his sheets, Grusha pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "I never thought I would have this again," she said quietly. "Love, partnership, hope for the future, neither did I, yet here we are, here we are," she kissed his shoulder. "My husband, my wife." The words felt like a talisman against the darkness, a declaration of defiance against a world that would tear them apart. Spring arrived in full, and with it, the complications they had been dreading. Marcus Reynolds visited more frequently, bringing news from town, and Yosef had to grow increasingly creative about hiding evidence of his extended household. The girls learned to be silent when riders approached, to hide in the root cellar or the barn, to move like ghosts through their own home. It was no way to live, and everyone knew it. "We cannot keep this up forever," Grusha said one night after a particularly close call. "Eventually, someone will notice, someone will ask questions. I know. So what do we do?" Yosef had been thinking about this for weeks, an idea forming that was either brilliant or suicidal. "We leave. All of us. We take what we can carry, sell the rest, and head for the coast. Find one of those towns where humans and orcs trade peacefully. Start fresh somewhere that does not care about our past." Grusha stared at him. "This farm has been in your family for 3 generations. And it is just land. You and the girls, you are family. You matter more than any piece of ground. Yosef, you cannot just abandon your heritage. Watch me." He took her hands. "I mean it, Grusha. This place has been my prison for 3 years, full of ghosts and sorrow. Yes, my family built it, but they are gone. I am all that is left, and I choose to build something new with you. The journey will be dangerous. Weeks on the road, traveling through areas that might be hostile to orcs. Then we travel carefully. We avoid main roads, stick to wilderness paths. I know these mountains, I can get us through. And if we are caught, we run. We fight if we must, we survive." He pulled her close. "Together." Grusha buried her face against his neck. "You are giving up everything for us." "I am gaining everything that matters." The decision made, they began preparations. Yosef sold his livestock to Marcus, claiming he wanted to travel to see the world beyond the valley. His neighbor thought he was mad but paid fair prices. Yosef carefully packed supplies, planning their route, gathering everything they would need for the journey. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 2 weeks before they were set to leave, a group of riders appeared at Yosef's gate. 6 men, armed and grim-faced, wearing the insignia of the Valley Militia. Yosef's blood ran cold. "Yosef Hartford," the leader called. "That is me." Yosef stepped onto his porch, keeping his body between the men and his house. Inside, he knew Grusha was hiding the girls, holding them silent. "We are searching for orcs. There is reason to believe some of the raiders who escaped might be hiding in this area. I have not seen any orcs." The leader, a hard-faced man named Thomas Wright, narrowed his eyes. "You would not mind if we searched your property then?" Every instinct screamed at Yosef to refuse, but that would only increase suspicion. "Of course not, though I do not know what you expect to find." The men spread out, searching the barn, the outbuildings, tramping through his fields. Yosef's heart hammered as 2 of them approached the house. "We will need to check inside as well," Thomas said. "As I said, be my guest." Yosef led them through his home, praying desperately that Grusha and the girls had made it to their hiding spot in the root cellar. The men searched his bedroom, the main room, poked into his kitchen stores. One of them paused at the door to what had been his daughter's room. "What is in here?" "Storage," Yosef said, his mouth dry. "Old furniture, mostly." The man pushed open the door and Yosef's heart stopped, but the room was empty save for dust-covered furniture. No sign that anyone had been sleeping there for months. Satisfied? Yosef asked, working to keep his voice level. Thomas looked around one more time, his gaze sharp and suspicious. Then he nodded slowly. For now, but Hartford, if you see any orcs, you report it immediately. Understood? Of course. The men left, and Yosef stood on his porch watching them ride away, his hands shaking with released tension. Only when they were completely out of sight did he return inside and knock on the floor panel that led to the root cellar. Grusha emerged with the girls, all three of them pale and frightened. "That was too close," she said. "I know. They will be back, and next time they might search more thoroughly. Then we leave, now, today." They worked through the night, packing only what was essential. Yosef left a note for Marcus, telling him to take whatever he wanted from the farm, that he was going to start fresh somewhere new. He did not mention his traveling companions. By dawn they were ready. 4 packs stuffed with supplies, warm clothes, what coin Yosef had managed to gather. They stood in the farmhouse one last time, and Yosef felt a pang of loss. This had been his home, his family's legacy. But as he looked at Grusha and her daughters, he knew he was making the right choice. "Ready?" he asked. "No," Grusha said honestly, "but let us go anyway." They slipped away as the sun rose, taking wilderness paths that Yosef knew from his childhood explorations. The journey was hard. Spring rains had turned the trails to mud, and they had to move slowly with the girls. At night they made cold camps, afraid to light fires that might draw attention. They ate dried rations and huddled together for warmth. But they were together, and that made all the difference. A week into their journey, they encountered their first real trouble. They were following a game trail through dense forest when voices ahead made them freeze. Yosef crept forward and his blood ran cold. Another militia patrol, 6 men blocking the path, checking travelers. He crept back to where Grusha waited with the girls. "We need to go around. There are too many to risk talking our way past." They backtracked and cut through thicker forest, thorns tearing at their clothes, the girls struggling to keep up. For hours they pushed through the underbrush until Neela tripped and cried out in pain. Her ankle was swelling rapidly. "It might be broken," Grusha said, her face tight with worry. They could not stay here, but Neela could not walk. Yosef made a quick decision, fashioning a carrier so he could bear the girls' weight on his back. It slowed them even further, and by nightfall they had barely made any distance. That night, huddled in a small cave, Neela feverish with pain, the reality of their situation crashed down on them. "We are not going to make it, are we?" Mika asked, her young voice small and scared. "Of course we are," Yosef said firmly. "Your sister just needs rest. In a few days, she will be better and we will continue." But Grusha's eyes met his over the girls' heads, and he saw the doubt there. 2 more days passed. Neela's ankle improved slightly, but not enough for her to walk. They were running low on food, and the weather had turned cold and wet again. Yosef hunted when he could, but game was scarce. On the 3rd night, with their supplies nearly exhausted and Neela growing weaker, Yosef made a decision. "I am going to scout ahead. There is a settlement a few miles from here, a small crossroads town. I might be able to get supplies." "That is too dangerous," Grusha protested. "So is starving. Stay hidden. I will be back by morning." He left before she could argue further, moving quickly through the darkness. The town was small, just a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads. Yosef approached carefully, keeping to shadows, and spotted a general store. He was about to enter when he heard familiar voices. His blood froze. Thomas Wright and 2 other men from the militia, drinking at the small tavern across the street. Tracking someone. Fresh signs on the northern trail. Orcs? Maybe. Or maybe someone hiding orcs. There were rumors about Hartford, the way he was acting, all nervous and jumpy, and he just up and left his farm. That does not sit right. You think he is helping them. I think he is either helping them or he is running from something. Either way, I want to know what. Yosef's heart pounded. They were looking for him, looking for Grusha and the girls. He purchased supplies as quickly as he could, keeping his face hidden, and slipped back into the darkness. When he returned to the cave, Grusha took one look at his face and knew. They are coming. Yes, we need to move now. Neela cannot, then I will carry her the whole way if I must, but we cannot stay here. They pushed on through the night, Yosef bearing Neela's weight, Mika stumbling with exhaustion, Grusha supporting them all with grim determination. By dawn, they had put several more miles between themselves and the town, but everyone was at their limit. We cannot keep this pace, Grusha finally said. The girls need real rest, proper shelter. Yosef knew she was right. They needed to find somewhere safe, even if just for a few days. He racked his memory, trying to think of anywhere they might hide. Then he remembered. Old Jim's hunting cabin, deep in the forest. Jim had been a friend of his father's, dead now for years. The cabin was remote, barely more than a shack, but it would have walls and a roof. It took them another day to find it, but when they finally pushed through the overgrown path and saw the weathered structure, relief flooded through Yosef. The cabin was in rough shape but intact. Inside, there was even a small stack of ancient firewood. We can rest here, Yosef said. A few days, let Neela heal, regain our strength. They collapsed inside, too exhausted to do more than eat cold rations before falling asleep in a pile of shared warmth. Yosef took the first watch, sitting by the door with an old knife, listening to the forest sounds. Grusha woke sometime in the deep night and came to sit beside him. I am sorry, she said quietly. For what? For all of this. For the danger I have brought into your life. You should be safe on your farm, living peacefully. Instead, you are hiding in a shack, running for your life. Yosef took her hand. I would rather be here with you than anywhere else without you, even if we do not make it, even if they catch us, even then. Grusha, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life, not because they were easy, but because they mattered, because you matter. Because waking up beside you and seeing the girls grow and building something together, that is what living is supposed to be. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. I love you, you impossible man. I love you too. They sat like that until dawn, drawing strength from each other. The next few days were a strange oasis of peace. Neela's ankle healed enough for her to hobble around. Yosef hunted successfully, bringing back rabbit and even a young deer. Grusha found edible plants in the forest, supplementing their meals. The girls played in the small clearing around the cabin, their laughter a bright sound in the wilderness. But it could not last. On the 6th day, Yosef was returning from checking his snares when he heard horses. He dropped low, watching through the trees as riders moved along the distant trail. Thomas Wright and his men still searching, they were getting closer. Yosef hurried back to the cabin. We need to leave, tonight. They packed quickly, more practiced at it now. As darkness fell, they slipped away from the cabin, heading deeper into the mountains. The going was rough, the terrain steep and treacherous, but it was their best chance of losing the pursuit. For 3 days they climbed, pushing higher into the peaks. The air grew thin and cold. Snow appeared in patches, then in drifts. They were all exhausted, running on sheer willpower. On the 4th day, they crested a ridge and Yosef's heart soared. Below them, the land sloped away toward the coastal plains. They could see the ocean in the distance, a silver line on the horizon. We are almost there, he said. 2 more days, maybe 3, and we will be in the coastal towns. But their relief was premature. As they started down the far side of the ridge, Mika's foot slipped on loose scree. She tumbled, crying out, and started to slide toward a steep drop. Grusha lunged, catching her daughter but losing her own balance. Both of them skidded toward the edge. Yosef dropped his pack and threw himself forward, grabbing Grusha's arm. For a terrifying moment, they all teetered on the brink. Then, straining with every ounce of strength, Yosef hauled them back from the edge. They collapsed in a heap, hearts racing, the reality of how close they had come to disaster making them shake. "Everyone all right?" Yosef gasped. "Yes," Grusha managed. "Thank you, gods, thank you." They took the descent more carefully after that, testing each step. By the time they reached the bottom of the ridge, night was falling. They made camp in a small ravine, huddling together against the cold. "One more day," Yosef said, trying to sound confident. "Just one more day." But morning brought disaster. They woke to find themselves surrounded. Thomas Wright and a dozen men, all armed, all grim-faced. "Yosef Hartford," Thomas said, "step away from the orcs." Yosef stood slowly, positioning himself between the men and his family. "No, do not be a fool. These are not pets or strays, they are orcs. Dangerous and probably involved in the raids. They are a mother and her children who have done nothing wrong. They are monsters who should be put down." Thomas gestured to his men. "Take them." "No," Yosef drew his knife. "You will have to go through me." Thomas actually laughed. "You are one man with a knife. We are 12 with swords and bows. This is over, Hartford. Step aside or die with them." "Then I will die with them." Grusha stepped up beside him, a large rock in her hand, her face set with determination. "And I with him." Even Neela and Mika picked up stones, standing together, a family ready to fight to the last. Thomas's expression darkened. "So be it. Men, kill them all." The militia drew weapons and advanced. Yosef braced himself, knowing this was hopeless but refusing to go down without a fight. Then a voice rang out from the rocks above. "I would not do that if I were you." Everyone froze. A figure stood on the ridge, silhouetted against the rising sun. Then another appeared, and another. Within seconds, a dozen shapes lined the rocks, all carrying bows, all with arrows nocked. "Who are you?" Thomas demanded. One of the figures stepped forward into better light. It was an orc, tall and powerful, with intricate tattoos and the bearing of a warrior. "I am Gruk of the Iron Peak clan, and you are threatening people under my protection." "Your protection?" "These orcs are outcasts. They have no clan. They do now." Gruk's voice was hard as stone. "Lower your weapons and leave. This is your only warning." Thomas looked between his men and the orc warriors, clearly calculating odds. Finally, he spat into the dirt. "This is not over, Hartford. You have made an enemy today. I already had enemies. Now I have allies too." The militia withdrew, riding back toward the ridge. Only when they were out of sight did the orc warriors descend. Gruk approached Grusha, studying her closely. "You are the one they speak of. The mother who saved a human child and was cast out." "I am," Grusha said warily. "Word of your deed reached my clan. We believe differently than your old tribe. We believe that strength comes in many forms and mercy is not weakness." Gruk looked at Yosef. "And you are the human who chose love over fear, who gave up everything for an orc and her children." "I am." Gruk nodded slowly. "The coastal towns are 3 days from here. We will escort you there, ensure you arrive safely. And if you wish, Grusha of no clan, we would be honored to welcome you and your family into the Iron Peak." Tears filled Grusha's eyes. "You would do this?" "We would. Your mate is human, but love knows no boundaries of race. Your daughters are half-bloods, but they carry the strength of both peoples. You would be valued among us." Grusha looked at Yosef, questions in her eyes. He took her hand. "What do you want?" he asked. "I will support whatever you choose." "I want." She looked at her daughters, then at the warriors surrounding them, then back at Yosef. "I want a home. A real home where we can be ourselves without hiding, where the girls can grow up safe and loved. Whether that is with your clan or in the coastal towns, I do not care. As long as we are together. Then we have both, Gruck said. The Iron Peak has territory near the coast. You can settle there, be part of our community, but also trade with the humans who accept us. Build your life in peace. It was more than Yosef had dared hope for. He looked at Grusha and saw his own wonder and relief reflected in her face. Yes, she said. Yes, we will come. True to his word, Gruck and his warriors escorted them to the coast. The journey took 3 days, but with protection and plenty of supplies, it felt almost pleasant. The Iron Peak orcs were welcoming, curious about Yosef but respectful. They taught Neela and Mika some of their language, showed them orc games, treated them like the valued children they were. When they finally reached the coastal settlement, Yosef understood why it was different. Here, orcs and humans lived side by side, not in perfect harmony but in functional coexistence. They traded goods, shared the land, even occasionally intermarried. It was not paradise, but it was possible. Gruck showed them to a small plot of land on the edge of the settlement, unclaimed territory that Yosef could homestead. Build here, the orc chief said. Farm your land. Join our community, you will find acceptance among us. Over the next months, Yosef did exactly that. He built a new house with help from both orc and human neighbors. He cleared land and planted crops. Grusha proved invaluable, her hunting skills providing meat while they waited for the farm to produce. The girls thrived, making friends among both species, learning both cultures. And slowly, remarkably, they built a life. One evening, as summer turned to fall, Yosef and Grusha stood on their porch watching the sunset over the ocean. The house was finished, solid and warm. The crops were healthy. The girls were playing with the neighbors' children, their laughter carrying on the breeze. You regret it? Grusha asked. Leaving your family's farm, your old life. Yosef pulled her close, kissing her temple. Not for a single moment, even though it was hard, even though we almost died. Especially because of that. Those trials proved what we are capable of together, proved that our love is stronger than hatred or fear or the world's disapproval. Grusha smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed her face. You are going to make me cry again. Good tears this time, I hope. The best tears. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. I want to tell you something. What? I am pregnant. Yosef's heart stopped. You are certain? Yes, I know the signs. By spring we will have another child. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, overcome with emotion. Another child. A new life born from their union, a symbol of everything they had fought for. I love you, he said fiercely. I love you so much. And I love you, my husband, my heart. They stood like that as the sun sank into the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Inside the house, Neela called that dinner was ready. Mika was arguing about whose turn it was to set the table. Normal, domestic sounds. The sounds of family. As they went inside, Yosef felt complete in a way he never had before. Yes, life had been hard. Yes, they had faced terrible dangers and might face more in the future. But they had also found something precious. Acceptance, community, and above all, love that transcended every boundary the world tried to impose. That winter, Grusha grew round with child. The Iron Peak orcs threw a celebration in their honor, welcoming the coming baby as a symbol of unity between their peoples. Even some of the human settlers attended, curious and cautiously optimistic about this unusual family. When spring came and Grusha went into labor, it was attended by both an orc midwife and a human healer, working together to ensure a safe delivery. After a long night, a baby's cry filled their home, a son. small but healthy, with green-tinged skin and the smallest hints of tusks just visible in his gums. He had his mother's pointed ears and his father's bright eyes. "What will we name him?" Grusha asked, exhausted but radiant. Yosef looked at this tiny person, this perfect blend of two worlds, and knew. "Hope. We will call him Hope because that is what he represents. Hope for the future, hope that the world can change, hope that love can bridge any divide." Grusha smiled through tears. "Hope Hartford. It is perfect." As Yosef held his son for the first time, with his wife resting peacefully and his daughters crowding close to see their new brother, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with an old orc woman standing in the rain, begging for one meal for her starving children. It had led through danger and fear and desperate flight, through prejudice and hatred and violence. But it had also led to this: a family, whole and happy and safe. A home built on love and acceptance. A future where his children, all of them, could grow up free to be themselves. The rain had stopped long ago. Now there was only sunshine, spreading warm and bright over their little farm by the sea. And in that light, Yosef saw not just what they had survived, but what they had created, a life worth living together. Neela and Mika grew into strong, confident young women, comfortable in both their orc and human heritage. They became bridges between the communities, teaching orc children to read and write while learning traditional hunting and combat skills. Hope grew quickly, showing signs of both his parents' best qualities, his mother's strength and his father's kindness. Years passed. The farm prospered. More mixed families began to settle in the area, drawn by the Iron Peak's acceptance and the possibility of living openly. The coastal settlement grew into a small town, a place where species did not matter as much as character. Yosef and Grusha grew old together, their love deepening with each season. They never forgot those early desperate days, the fear and the flight, but those memories served to make them appreciate what they had built even more. On their 10th anniversary, Yosef took Grusha back to the old oak tree where they had first pledged themselves to each other. The tree was far away now, part of a past life, but he had brought a sapling from it, planted here on their coastal farm. "I wanted you to have this," he said, gesturing to the young tree. "A piece of where we began, growing in the place where we built our future." Grusha touched the tree's bark gently, then turned and kissed him with all the passion and tenderness of a decade together. "You sentimental fool, I love it, I love you. And I love you, always." They stood beneath the tree as the sun set over the ocean. Two people from different worlds who had found in each other something more precious than gold or glory. A home, a family, and a love that would endure whatever challenges the future might bring. The old orc had stood in the rain with her two daughters, begging for one meal. The widowed farmer had opened his door, and in that single act of kindness, both their worlds had changed forever.